Still small voice cries.
Hey everyone, it's MK. Welcome back to MK Quilts. So I have a question for you. Are you a creature of habit? Well, for me, that answer is yes. I very often here in the studio do things the same way every time. Well, I had a little bit of a scenario on a quilt I was working on where I had to change it up a little bit, and it had to do with the way that I stitch pantographs. So I'm going to take you inside of simulation. I'm going to walk you through the situation that came up, and I'm going to show you how I had to make a change to the way I normally do things, but it was a really quick thing that you all can do. So I'll meet you inside a simulation, and then I'll meet you right back here. All right, so let's talk through this pantograph and how I'm going to crop this off at the bottom of the quilt. So the first thing, just to explain what you're looking at on the screen, just a simple line drawing representing a quilt, and this beautiful pattern by Anne Bright. It's called Think Spring, and it's the pantograph that I was working on yesterday on a quilt. Now, one thing I want to mention about what you're seeing here is, first thing, let's look over here at the left-hand side. I have a start point right here, then I have a stop point, then I have another start point. And the thing about the pattern that you're looking at right now is normally in my studio, when I'm stitching complete edge-to-edge pantographs, I like those pantographs to be connected from row to row so that I don't have to address the machine on the right-hand side. So basically when it gets done stitching that first pass, it's going to be connected to the next pass, and it's going to stitch right on through, and it's going to start going from right to left. So let me just show you that for a second, just so that we don't have to watch this whole pass stitch out. Let's just go ahead and start it a little bit closer to the right hand side. And we'll just watch this stitch on through the end of that first pass. Then it travels down to the second pass, and it starts stitching from right to left. Okay, all of that instruction is in my best practices for pantos rental video. In that video, it's like a 2.5 hour video that we cover all kinds of things, my approach to pantographs. So I'm not getting into all of that instruction here. But what I wanted to explain about this particular pattern is that it's a pretty dense pattern. And I was stitching it at a pretty tall height. Okay, so one pass of the pattern was about 10 inches or a little bit more, meaning that if I had two passes connected together, it wasn't going to fit in my throat depth on my fusion. Okay, so it wasn't going to work on this particular quilt, even though that's how I normally stitch pantographs in my studio. Okay, so let's go to plan B, and I'm going to show you what I did on this particular pattern and how I addressed it at the bottom of the quilt. Okay, so basically all you're looking at on the screen here is the exact same pattern. It's set up to the exact same height for one pass, but you'll notice this time I have my start points all over on the left-hand side, right? And I only have two passes rather than three, because I'm going to go ahead and stitch each pass from left to right. When the machine is done stitching over on the right hand side, I'm going to let it travel back over to the left hand side, do a needle down, needle up, mark my spot, and I'm going to reposition. Okay, again, all of that, the way that I advance and reposition, that is all covered in my best practices for pantos. Okay, so use your imagination. Just pretend that it's stitched, traveled over, needle down, needle up, and I'm going to advance. Okay, so advance, advance, advance. After I would advance, I would come down to the next spot, and I'm just kind of taking a guess here, and a reposition on start point, stitch, stitch, stitch. Once it got over here, travel over here, needle down, needle up, mark my spot, advance, 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 and so on and so forth, all the way through the quilt. Okay, so now we're down to the end of our quilt, and we want to go ahead and crop off at the bottom what we don't need. Okay, so we'll come down here and once again just modify, reposition, reposition on start point. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and we can see now that we have one complete pass that's going to cover this quilt, but we have another just small portion of a pass that also needs to be included at the bottom. Okay, well, it's time to create a new area. So I'm going to move my machine off to the left-hand side and just a little bit above where that pattern would start and do a two corner. I'm going to bring my machine down towards the bottom of the quilt, over onto the right hand side, just a little bit off the edge there, and my next two corner. Okay, now we're going to crop because we don't want the rest of this pattern here outside of our area box. So modify, crop. We want to close our edges and we'll crop outside. Okay, so now we're ready. We're going to go ahead and baseline. Let's just zoom so you can see that. Okay, so once again, our machine is going to stitch all the way over here towards the end. So let's just go ahead and let that stitch out. We'll create a new start point over there and we'll just let that stitch. So now, rather than stitching on through to that last pass, it's no longer connected. So my machine is going to stop right here. And in days gone by, what I would normally do is cut my threads, let my machine travel back over to this spot, and stitch out that last little piece of a cropped row. Well, we don't really have to do that. Let's just go ahead and stop our machine. I usually use the emergency stop right there. Now, what we can do is we are completely in position right now. This whole pass has been stitched out. Our machine stopped over here and we just stopped the machine. We just stopped Pro Stitcher. What we can do right now is just do a modify, swap start and end. And do you see how the start point now switched itself to over here on the right hand side? All right, we're perfectly in position. We don't even have to clip our threads or anything at this point. We just want to make sure that our needle is up. Always want to make sure our needle is up if we're going to send our machine traveling. Our start point is right here. We're completely 100% in position. All we have to do is go Pro Stitcher Quilt at that point. Now, we don't even really need a pull-up because our thread is already engaged, top and bottom is already engaged, but I normally leave a pull-up turned on just because I don't want to turn it off and then have it not be turned on for my next project. I will turn off, however, the pull-up auto. I don't want my machine to travel down here and then move to the side. Okay, so we're going to stitch and we'll just run. Our machine will go right down to that next start point, which we have now swapped to be on that side, and it's just going to stitch from right to left. So that's a really, really simple technique that all of us can use, whether or not we have our rows connected or whether we don't. That's not really the point of this particular instructional video. The point is when you get to that bottom, you don't even have to move your machine. Just swap your start and end point and let your machine stitch in the other direction. Now, one point about this stitching from right to left, it's been a big topic of discussion for a few years actually about the fact that our machines sometimes don't like to stitch from right to left. Maybe we'll have some tension issues or some stitch quality issues, or maybe we'll just have some thread breaking or shredding, those types of issues. What I can tell you guys, and I am sold 100% completely on ballpoint needles. It's all I use in my machines now. Pretty much an 18 lives on both McFinity and McFusion, and those ballpoint needles, I just don't have the issues that I just mentioned that I had in the past. I don't have them any longer with using ballpoint needles. I can stitch in both directions on any kind of a pattern without any issues at all. So of course you can get all those ballpoint needles on mkquilts.com, and I appreciate your business on that. Okay, I hope this was helpful. If you want the full class on pantos, hop on over to mkquilts.com, the video training tab, and go ahead and rent the best practices for pantos in premium. And then, just as a quick reminder, we now have the USB stick option for your video rentals. We just ask that you rent the videos on the website. If you want them to be sent to you on a USB stick, then after you're done renting the video, just hop back over to the website, go to the product store, order up your USB, and any and all content that you have rented from us can be shipped to you on a USB stick. Okay, you guys, until next time, it's MK from my studio to yours. Happy quilting. Bye bye. So there you have it. Very, very simple way of approaching stitching from left to right and then from right to left on that very last row. Now, just a little tidbit and a little hint for you to think about. You can actually use that technique as you stitch through a pantograph on every row. I don't do it that way. As I mentioned in the video, I like to connect my pantographs. I do that step in Art and Stitch. All of that is explained in my Pantos video. But you can absolutely set up your pantograph in an alternative way and just do swap start and end at the end of each pass. So think about that one a little bit, try it out on your own, and let me know what you come up with. Make sure to share always what you do, what you create, things that you've learned from either my YouTube videos or my rental content. I love to see you share what you've built, what you've stitched, and what you've learned. All right, until next time, everybody, it's MK from my studio to yours. Happy quilting. Bye-bye.